Oh, the media, they're extremely frustrated by the success of President Trump, despite 2 years of an investigation that went nowhere. And now they're moving from an obsession over impeachment to this.
We know he broke the law. We know he was a criminal as far as obstruction of justice. Here's the answer. You take it from a binary choice of 2 lanes, you create a 3rd lane. You take the word impeachment and you change it to criminal activity.
Do you agree that the headline here is President Trump likely committed a crime, but I could not charge him because of the legal guidance that sitting presidents can't be charged?
Yes, I think he finally made it crystal clear.
Well, so basically impeachment is just not good enough anymore, or maybe not politically palatable. Joining me now is former Speaker of the House, host of the new podcast, Newt's World, and Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. Thanks for being with us tonight, Newt. Do you think that this will hurt Democrats in 2020 if they end up pushing forward on this?
Sure, I think they look nuts. I mean, Mueller himself looked nuts. You come out and you say, you know, the Russians that we've indicted are innocent until proven guilty. But now the president, we haven't proven him innocent yet. Just think about that paragraph and what Mueller said. And now you got the Democrats who are saying, all right, well, maybe we can't impeach him, but we all know he's a criminal. Well, how do they know that? But I think you have to start out where the fascist left is. Free speech means you're not allowed to speak. The whole model of the way they deal with things, if you say anything wrong, you're either homophobic, Islamophobic, you know, something. And so their normal behavior is to just make stuff up. There's no evidence that the president has been guilty of anything, and that's, you had 2 years. Mueller had 15 left-wing Democratic lawyers, all of them, by the way, very good prosecutors. He had, I think, $30 million. He locked up at least 2 people in solitary confinement for lengths of time that, frankly, are un-American, and he couldn't find anything. Now, at that point, the Democrats ought to go on and talk about policy and recognize that this is really a dry hole. They're not going to get anything good out of this.
Oh, it's interesting that you mentioned the policy deal, Newt, because even some Democrats who are pretty lefty are getting a little frustrated by the fact that when they're invited on TV shows or to speak to the media, the policies or the issues that they want to talk about, they're being eclipsed. So Brad Sherman experienced this yesterday on MSNBC.
I've been trying to get on your show to talk about the Saudi nuclear program. And if it was my time, we'd be talking about efforts to control drug prices. There's this image in the country that Congress is focused only on impeachment. That's the only thing I can get on TV to talk about, but it's not really what I'm working on.
So do you think that more Democrats are going to continue to maybe push back on this? Because we're going to get to this later. We talked about this, the issue with the polls. President Trump's polls are going up in key metrics, key ways. I just get the sense that people are on to this whole game now. I mean, they're on to the fact that the Democrats aren't interested in debate. They're interested in demonizing. That's what they do.
Look, we just had a referendum on the news media, and the news media lost. I mean, that's the #1 thing in the last 2 years. They did really 3 years, counting the campaign. They did everything they could to destroy Trump. He's still president. He's improving in his poll numbers. The economy is growing. And on most major issues, the country is much closer to Trump than it is to radical Democrats. So I think it's a very different environment than Democrats thought they'd be in. And I predict you're going to see a Republican Senate passing positive legislation, and Pelosi's over here with a divided House Democratic Party, part of which wants to spend all day, every day attacking Donald Trump, and part of which, frankly, out of survival, wants to pass something. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Kevin McCarthy begin to form an alliance with 30 or 40 Democrats whose own reelection is at stake if they stay negative.
Yeah, well, look at all these Democrats. We're doing a continuing series on basically doing an update on the so-called moderate Democrats. And so many of them pledged to work with Trump, and then push comes to shove, they're not working with Trump. So I think that's an excellent point. And Newt, part of this new substantive issue that Trump is tackling is the border, which you and I have been talking about for years. And the situation is untenable. It's beyond crisis. At almost every measure, it's beyond crisis. What about the decision to slap the 5% tariffs on Mexican goods effective June 10th, unless Mexico does more to stem this massive tide of humanity coming up from mostly the Northern Triangle countries?
You know, one of the things that's going to be part of Trump's legacy that historians are going to write about is that he just has common sense. And he follows projects through just exactly like the kind of businessman that he was. So none of these people would be on the American border if they weren't coming through Mexico. I mean, we can stop people who come by boat or by airplane. And so without Mexican compliance, all of these people would still be down in Central America. And I think this is the first time we've seen an American president who said, look, and by the way, the Democrats in Congress are forcing him into this position because they refuse to do the common sense things, which are fund the Border Patrol and build the wall and allow us to contain things. So the president has said, look, if you're not going to help me, then I can use my authority to put so much pressure on Mexico.
Yeah.
And candidly, if he then moves to cut off sending money to Mexico, which he could do, you would then see an enormous crisis in the Mexican economy.
We have a lot of Republican senators, at least some, who are against these tariffs. Chuck Grassley, Portman, Joni Ernst, Toomey. Toomey's against any tariff ever. I mean, he's apparently fine with China winning on every front, or at least it seems that way. But a lot of these farmers are being hurt by the soybean tariffs. China can't, China's, not getting them, not buying them. It's hurting them. And how much pain is really being inflicted on the American consumer, and how long can this administration hold out? I mean, I completely agree with what they're doing on tariffs, but I'm hearing from all these Wall Street people who do a lot of work in China, for instance, like, how this is really hurting us. So it's like, yeah, because you're doing all these deals with communist China. Maybe we should stop doing deals with them.
Look, there are a number of billionaires who love China because that's where they got to be billionaires. I would simply hope that the president will presently say, let's take as much of the Chinese tariff money as we need to, and we will divert it to the American farmers. So we'll use the Chinese tariff payments in order to take care of the farmers who the Chinese are trying to rip off. And I think if he did that and did it on a large enough scale, that it would become a non-issue. The truth is, in the long run, China cannot win a trade war with the United States. It's simply not possible. There are too many other countries we can go to in order to buy things. The Chinese are going to build a whole series of competitors in Asia, in places like Thailand and Vietnam and the Philippines, and they're just going to lose market share. And at the same time, we're going to find out that we don't need them.
No, we don't need them on most things, but the soybean farmers, they're always going to get the attention that on other networks because it looks like it's going to hurt Trump. But I mean, our economy versus the Chinese economy and the lopsided trade, it definitely doesn't hurt us. Just do the math.
But if the president's right in the number of billions of dollars he's talking about, he could afford to double the income of every soybean farmer in the United States just taking the money out of the Chinese tariff and send him a little note saying, you might want to send a note to Xi Jinping thanking him for the amount of money he's now sending you.
All right. Newt, thank you so much for joining us, and I really appreciate you staying up.